at the airport. We're flying Air Canada, so my parents dropped me off, and then I was on my way. Made it through security and found my gate. Eventually, we started boarding after quite a few delays, but I took my seat, got cozy in my blanket, and waited. We didn't take off until 11 o'clock, but in the meantime, I played around with the screen and looked at our flight route, and then we were finally moving. Took a very, very long taxi through the airport, and eventually we were up and into the air. As we crossed the ocean, we started flying into the daylight and arrived in France. We can see all of the pastures and farmlands as we approach the airport for landing. Went through border security and then went to collect our luggages. We also witnessed tourists or a Parisian enjoying their time on the luggage belt. Then we hit the road on a coach bus heading toward Tours. We actually got into some traffic here. We sat still for about 45 minutes before we had to drive backwards on the highway. We can see all of the people in front of us are also backing up in order to get past the huge traffic delay. We made a stop at a rest stop and picked up some lunch, and eventually we were in the countryside. We finally arrived in Tours around 8 p.m. And checked into our residence. After unpacking, we decided to go and explore the city. So we walked around. There's the Gare de Tours and some of the bistros and restaurants and streets of Paris, and then stopped at a crepe place for dinner and had a Nutella crepe. The next morning, we stopped at a briocherie for breakfast and picked up some brioche. We also went to the grocery store where they had eggs sitting on the shelf, a whole aisle of yogurt, and a whole aisle of cheese, and a whole aisle of cookies. Just amazing. Walked over to the Institute where we began our walking tour of Tours. We visited the major monuments, including Place Plumereau and Les Moines, as well as the two major basilicas or cathedrals within Tours, and the Arts Museum and the Opera House. walked over to the three markets in tours, including the flower market, the fresh farm produce market, and some other vendors selling clothing and items. Later in the afternoon, we went and explored the town a little on our own before we headed to our welcome dinner for UofT Study Abroad. We enjoyed some music playing in one of the streets. For the dinner, I had birada, duck confit, and pineapple pavlova. After, we decided to walk along the Loire River and visit La Guinguette before heading home. The next morning, we were off for our first field trip to Amboise Chateau and City.
I feel like I didn't, and then there was like a point in my life
We then visited Le Clos Lucé, which is a small chateau or manor in which Leonardo da Vinci spent his last 3 years of life living here. Here is the little chapel that the manor was named after, as well as the bedrooms that Leonardo da Vinci and King Charles VIII stayed in. Here is Leonardo da Vinci's studio and the three paintings that he brought with him to Clos Lucé, St. John the Baptist, St. Anne, and the famous Mona Lisa. Another fun fact is King Charles VIII actually died in this chateau simply by hitting his head. We also learned that the ritual of holding up your pinky finger came from the Middle Ages when people would use your pinky finger upwards to keep it clean in order to scoop spices at the dinner table. We then had the chance to explore some of Leonardo da Vinci's genius ideas and creations, both models, drawings, and video demonstrations, including this model of a tank, his model of a helicopter, plane, ball bearings, and much more. After exploring the inside of the chateau, we moved to the outside to explore the gardens, also dedicated to Leonardo da Vinci, and the beautiful flowers and landscaping. For the second half of the day, we headed to Chateau d'Amboise. We explored the outside of the chateau and the inside, getting views of the bridge, going up spiral staircases, looking out through stained glass windows, and so much more. We also explored the chateau's chapel, in which the tomb of Leonardo da Vinci is found, as he actually wrote in his testament that he'd like to be buried in the Chateau d'Amboise, and he donated the Mona Lisa to the city of Amboise and King Francis I. We explored a bit more of the town before heading home on the bus. And on our way back to residence, we stopped for dinner and had some waffles.